What's going on, everybody? Gustav the 13th here with another video for the week of the 22nd of January 2026. We have another Victory Era suit here with the Zoloat Zanscare suit with its own little funky boogie eyes. General here at 2 priority with space compatibility, 3-star suit. Of course, has its own guarantee banner if you want to really roll for it. But I'll be honest with you, I'm feeling a little bit mixed about this one. And this is one of those suits, at least to me, on paper, makes a lot of sense. Technically, it's a 3 melee suit. You have a saber, you got a collision weapon binder, which is pretty much just like a big old shoulder lean that it does. That has not only instant knockdown, but blowback. And it's beam shield, which is interesting because it does a twirl similar to the counter twirl that you would do in the Banshee Norn, but just as a button. You know, you don't have to go into a stance and hope someone makes contact with you. Pretty decent coverage on it as well, with a health of 5k, power of 2700 baseline. The collision is 26, and the melee for the saber is 2350. This does have aerial melee as well. I'm talking about the melee so much because, as you can see with the stats, it leans more to it at 45. The range strength is 15, and it seems to be a weird trend so far with the first couple of Zanscare suits that we have, is that they have very shitty range, and these cannons are very akin to the cannon that is actually on the shoulder of the Shokyu, because it is low impact, mostly just for build up. And in these ones, at the very least, you can fire in the air, so you're not really limited to that. This does have flaps, but it only has flaps 1. But the typical thing would be to get a stun, pursue with the beam strings, which it has this. Kind of cool that we see this again after seeing it on the RF Camphor. Also, another thing to keep in mind, these are Vulcans, but they are chest Vulcans. It's actually underneath the armpit on the sides of the body, and you cannot fire those while moving. Even though the shoulder cannons on things like the Guard Custom and shit, you can. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to this suit. So you technically don't have anything that you can do pursuit-wise with high-speed movement on this thing, despite the fact that they want you to pursue in it. And also considering that if you look at its top speed, 215 out of the gate, not very fast. With a movement speed of 135. Let's try to get into more of a rhythm here. It also does have its visual receptors, so the compound eye multi-sensor, much like the Shokyu. I'm assuming for the most part, unless it's very specifically stated that it doesn't have it, most Zanscare suits are probably gonna have it. Also, this rifle is ammo based, 6 shots, 300 range, with a power of 2200. Something to keep in mind is that the maximum range between this and the cannons is just 300, so not a lot of reach in general. Still, it does have a laundry list of skills. Looking at the stats though, this is where things start to fall apart a little bit more, unless you're really keen to try to put some extra bulk on this thing. So 23k health, not too bad. But then we get into the defense. It's 18, 18, and 34 for ballistic beam and melee. You're talking like camphor numbers on a 600 baseline. That's not a camphor, considering that, and I'm very curious, I think he has it. Let me see. If we go into just 600 in general, right? Did he get it? Yeah. So, 22... I'm just gonna switch off. Oh my god, he put stuff on all of them. 22, 24, and 20 for that. Just such a big difference. On something that's a raid, by the way, that doesn't look like a giant space marine like this fucking thing does, and yet somehow it has less bulk. I don't understand that. Melee resistance out the ass though at 34. Range strength, like I said before, 15. Melee strength baseline of 45. Movement speed of 135, and then thruster and turning speed are both 75. Interesting, odd. But again, not a lot of boost considering the fact that this doesn't really have a good top speed. It does have Force Injector 3. And like I said, it has Flat Booster, but only Flat Booster 1. Now, it's kind of clear once we again look even beyond all the other melee and we get into the nitty gritty here. But let's go down the line here. So Emergency Evasion 2 rolls. Flight Control Program 3, Anti-Blast Stabilizer, High Performance Balancer, High Spec AMBEC 2, Maneuver Armor 1, Force Injector 3, melee combat controller 1, aerial melee system, which, like I said, you can only do the cable and the saber in the air. The shoulder lean you cannot do in the air. Or the shield for that matter, because that would be kind of weird. Be neat, but kind of weird. Offense system 1. So this is where things start to come together a little bit, and I'm gonna look at this. That's technically melee. I don't think it works that well for that, but reduces reactions when hit by a ranged attack when using melee combat. Considering that you technically have 1, 2, 3, 4 different melee things. I don't know if this directly counts. Maybe not so much as the 3, just because it can do a melee, but its weapon type is literally beam shield. Whatever the fuck that means. So they really want you to just keep using the traversal of all your downswings and just pursuit and stuff to close the gap. You're literally mailing yourself into them for the most part after you get the initial rifle hit or whatever. But it doesn't feel like it works out that way most of the time. And I think that's the bigger issue, because as you can see here, it's only got MA1. No damage control. So, you know, residual, when you're doing stuff in the in-between, you don't have any real accumulation defense. And enhanced tackle, while also having an instant thruster precision system, which means you can do 2 tackles because it reduces the thruster consumption for tackles by 30%, and an interrupt tackle, which means melee recovery can be cancelled with a tackle. So it's obvious that they really want you to focus down one person and really just like dig in to a certain area. You get 2 tackles to do it with in between stuff, while also being able to come out of your tackle from a thing, you know, when it comes to melee, just to make sure that you get it, because you also have enhanced tackle 5, which enhances your damage for tackles by 200% and plus 30% to distance covered. And then you got counter boost, so your mobile suit attack, defense, and mobility will increase temporarily after using a counter. Also, less time is needed for ranged weapons to focus and melee weapons to charge. So it's weird that they give you a suit that's not necessarily fast, but that needs to close the gap, but it also doesn't really have a lot of boosts to work with to do so, while also wanting you to get stuck in at a cost that has a bunch of suits that are just going to be in the air with a lot more resources to do so. You know, this is kind of like that weird CC gym or whatever, or not close combat, but the other one, powered it, whatever the hell. Except this isn't a cost where everything's going to be above you. So what the hell are we doing with this thing? It feels like if we were going to make a suit that does all that gets stuck in on the ground, then we probably should have been a couple costs behind this. Looking at the upgrades though, and also the parts launcher, so 20, 15, and 9 for close, medium, and long. Looking at the upgrades though, we also get +1 to melee resistance, +1 to melee modifier, +1 to thrusters, and then complex expansion at the end of the regular upgrades for 1940. +5 to melee resistance for the first unlockable, and then +5 to melee modifier for the second unlockable at 5820. So that will put you at a baseline of 50? Yeah, because there's no extra regular melee. It's all anti-melee. Which again, you got 34. Why do you need extra anti-melee? Give me some beamer ballistic, my lord. How much is that to ask for? It's also really weird that in a generation like this where everything pretty much uses beam, that it has no beam resistance, even though the Shokyu does. But bitching aside, let's take this into practice. I think I didn't put my buttons. I hope I did. If not, we'll just back out real quick. Well, let's show this off, because, you know, like I said, on paper, and, you know, the way that I'm explaining it, what is possible is executable. Is it consistent considering the things you have to contend with? I don't think so. But here we go. So 2-round bursts, as you can see, pretty slow with that. If you just hold it down from the baseline for the beam cannons, you'll get 1, 2, and then bang. If you wait a little bit, you'll get the extra one. Rifles, nothing to really write home about. As you can see there, not even any real ASL or anything. The beam strings, bit of a mixed bag. Keep in mind that it comes out of the right, so you do have to try to lead in with that. Also keep in mind that with the shoulder lean on there, as you saw, the clearance on it is really fucky. It is not a consistent thing to do OTG with. which is very unfortunate. I do like the twirl on this. Also, as you can see, decent amount of coverage with that shield. And it comes up relatively fast. Alright. The downswing then. Pretty typical. Big sweeping thing like that. You know, if we come in here, that's my problem. Right? This has a decent amount of churning on it, but it doesn't seem like it's able to... It doesn't seem like it allows it to correct a lot in order to make that hit. Like, it's coming in on the side there, and it is going in low. It is leaning in a decent amount, but I feel like they could give it a little bit more slack when it comes to how much it lets you turn and correct it. And they really need to give it a little bit more hitbox to make that more consistent. That feels like a really easy unit adjustment, but it's a shame that we have to talk like that already about this suit. But that's kind of how I feel about it right now. Alright, checking out the Vulcans then. Keep in mind, you can only do this in neutral movement or in the air. You cannot do these while boosting. I am slapping that button like a motherfucker, and it's not happening. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. 25 or so. And honestly, like it's got a good amount of rate of fire, so you're definitely just gonna do it like that. Not gonna worry about it too much. I would almost say just... So, in the time that it takes for the cable to come out, your saber comes right back up. The shoulder lean is a little bit awkward, but it's definitely something you should probably be trying to do to lead into just doing more saber shit. And maybe if you can get that in. The problem with that, as you can see, is that the cancel is really slow because the suit's very floaty when it comes to its landing recovery. And this takes too long to actually ready back up. If you're gonna do it, you're gonna have to do it forward. That way you don't have to worry about that gap. Ugh. And there goes. You know, without any kind of burner or extra fuel, you're gonna be running out of boost on this thing pretty quickly, unfortunately. Which also brings up an issue because, you know, you're gonna want to put at least a little bit of bulk on this. You're gonna feel that speed of just getting fucked up in here. Now, regardless of whether or not you're doing the downswing on this, it does kind of just bring it forward. So you do get that, and it just kind of juts itself from one side or the other. Keep in mind that the combo controller does not work with that. It'd be funny if it did. And then you got your visual receptors. You can view stuff for yourself. Kind of keep an eye on where things are. Zanscare suits, because they kind of just have that as a feature for the most part, outside of maybe one or two exceptions maybe in the future, you're going to have those on there, which is nice. It's nice to be able to just figure out what things are going, and, you know, there are some suits that have stealth in certain circumstances and stuff here, so. The other thing to keep in mind, even though this is a general, it's still not very good when it comes to base busting, and this is kind of an issue that we're going to be running into when we get into more victory era suits. We don't currently have a support. The victory, the Zoloat, and this thing all really kind of suck at base busting because even the missiles on the victory are not super great for it and have a pretty slow interval to begin with. So I feel like we're in a situation right now where, like, you know, and I was saying this in some of my matches, that like this thing, because of how much buildup these shoulder cannons have, and because it does have a little bit of generosity when it comes to being able to control it, it's a very good counter to the Zoloat and just raw aggression. But beyond that, even though it has this concept of being able to do all this stuff on the ground, other suits do what it does damage-wise faster, and for the most part, they don't have to put themselves in there as much as this thing does in order to be able to use the brunt of its weapons. So in a lot of situations, it's not really the ideal pick. It's not bad, but I feel like anyone who already has the victory, you don't really have to go for this thing. The Zoloat is going to have a rough go of it for a while, but if you have stuff like the sleeves or some other typical generals or whatever at this cost, you really don't have to worry too much going on with this thing. For the one or two people who really just like the way the melee gels together, they'll probably you know, be the ones that keep this from getting adjusted right away like it probably should. So most of this griping is because I had some really rough runs trying to figure this thing out. We did get a win in one of them. It didn't really feel like much of one to me, but you know, we're gonna put that match right around here. Jesus Christ.
We're coming up on the target. Get ready to head out, everyone.
Both of them. Bruh. Oh my god, here we go again.
Commencing operation.
I don't say it sucks because the second I do, I'm just gonna get worked by someone running it, but definitely not my bag right now.
Don't worry.
This suit.
You're taking some
Oh my motherfuck.
looking so hot.
Why me every time?
Ally has destroyed an enemy mobile suit. Nice. We've lost an allied unit. An ally has destroyed an enemy unit down. Way to go. Enemy marked.
Boy howdy, I sure would love it if I had something I could chase with.
Destroyed an enemy mobile.
No mobile shooting and no real Vulcans. I even have flaps.
Your mobile suit has been destroyed. An ally has destroyed. Pick where and how to redeploy. We've lost. Okay, let's give it another go. We've lost an allied unit. Enemy unit down. Way to go. Light damage. An ally has destroyed an enemy. You're taking some big
The
hits.
worst part is that was for the best because like this stupid shoulder needs to get leaned inwards because it's all on the right. And it wants to splay itself outwards to the right instead of bowing it inwards. Another case of the animation being too accurate
The mobile suit isn't looking.
to be functional.
Your mobile suit has been destroyed. You need to capture beacons to keep this operation moving. We've lost an allied unit. Okay, let's give it another go. Allies are firing on an enemy base.
Why are they firing on an enemy base? The enemy is literally here. Didn't even wipe anything.
Fine, don't worry. Enemy base is taking heavy damage. Good stuff, guys. Enemy marked.
Ooh, man, this thing's rifle sucks.
Allies destroyed.
And did no damage. That was a type advantage suit that was marked, and that shot didn't kill him. just because it hit his buffer. Like, that shouldn't even matter at that point.
Enemy unit down!
That is awful. Just knocked all this over. They got him though. Take a dent.
A little more till the base is down! Focus your fire! Our side,
Got you.
captured a beacon! Taking some big hits! Careful now! Your mobile suit is moving so much.
Nah.
Destroyed! Ally has destroyed an enemy mobile suit! Nuts!
Again, I wouldn't mind it if they just escalated everything tied to the Gundam. Like, the Alex shouldn't be as underpowered as it is. Unit 4 and 5 and all that shit should have gotten buffs, because they're all based on the same baseline.
An ally has destroyed an enemy mobile suit! Okay, let's give it another go!
It just doesn't make as much sense that they upgraded it in a vacuum the way that they did. And if anything, that just made it worse.
Your legs can't take much more! Fall back and fix them! An ally has destroyed an enemy mobile suit! Nice! The mobile suit
Oh my god.
has been destroyed! An ally has destroyed an enemy mobile suit! Nice! Two minutes left! Bases are extra valuable for this mission. Enemy base destroyed! Nice job! An ally is destroyed! We've lost an allied unit! Enemy marked! Light damage! You're fine, don't worry! You're taking some big hits!
No.
Your mobile suit has been destroyed! An ally has destroyed an
That
enemy mobile suit!
is too much damage.
We've lost an allied unit!
Yeah, several of these matches we just haven't seen this suit at
1
all.
minute left!
I don't think anyone's spinning on this thing either.
Give it another go!
We literally saw a couple on the enemy team, like, on our first account a couple times.
We've lost an allied unit! We've lost an allied unit!
Wow, that didn't hit him again.
You're taking... Your mobile suit has been destroyed!
Yeah, the hitbox in the shoulder is way too small. Like, if they're pretty much touching my titties, they should be getting knocked over. It's so stupid because they do these adjustments in increments instead of just putting them out there the way they should be.
Okay, let's give it another go! Enemy unit! Time's up!
Oh my god.
Mission accomplished! You and your crew did it!
This thing is a pain. Like, what the fuck?
Here are your rewards from the battle.
So that was our round in this thing. I already forgot what it's called. But, like I said, kind of rough going. Doesn't feel super individualistic outside of if you really single somebody out. And that's a little bit of a shame. Because there's gotta be a lot of stuff buzzing around you. If you know, are able to train this enough to get that third shot or second shot in there to get someone accumulated and down on the ground. that's nice, but unless they're immediately above you, then what else are you really gonna do, right? You know, maybe you close in for the cable before you have to. You know, the animations for the melee on this thing are both very ceremonious when it comes to the downswings. It really is more of an a ground-based kind of pursuit suit, especially because, you know, even with a little bit of extra help with thrusters and stuff, the flaps don't really lend themselves well to getting the altitude to just kind of zoom in on people compared to the other suits that literally have, oh, I don't know, Minovsky craft, higher flaps, and or a fucking helicopter blade to work with. So, you know, I think this suit, outside of those prototypes and kind of special things, is kind of what we should be expecting to see when it comes to more typical, like, Zanscare suits. And that may not be a good thing, considering, you know, what you're used to or what you're really hoping to achieve with these. That being said, like I said, there will probably be a couple of people that really lock in and do some crazy shit with it. There is a lot of melee potential in here because of the way that it's leaning with its baseline stats and the fact that it's running pretty much just 4 different melee-based attacks on it that string into each other decently well, as long as you're not getting, you know, buzzed around by a bunch of other shitheads on the outside. So, do I think we'll see some? Yeah. Do I think they're going to take over kind of like the Victory or Shokyu, you know, had some hands in there when they were doing their weeks? Not really. But for people that are waiting for other suits, you know, breathe a sigh of relief. This is not something you urgently need to get. Still, if you're into these Zanscare suits and stuff, there are worse things that you could try to run. So, that's kind of the long and short of it for how I feel about this right now. I do not have this on my main account, so I'm not really going to be able to do this during dailies, but we will probably be fighting at least a couple of them while we go through our stuff, you know, during the week. So we'll see how that turns out, how many we see, and if it ends up petering out a little bit quicker than even I'm going to give it credit for as we go along. But that's going to be it for now. Talking about the new suit, the Zoloat. And until next time, I hope you guys have a good rest of your morning, night, whatever, and I'll talk to you in the next video.